Hi there, and welcome back to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast from a wet, and I'm afraid to say snowy Newcastle this morning as I record this episode. Hopefully the snow won't lie and will disappear pretty quickly. In recent episodes, we've been exploring the differences between coaches and athletes and the various different measures of mental toughness. We've been looking at how these differences can either create friction or they can fuel development. And ultimately, this episode is going to continue on this theme. It's part 4, where we again focus on a measure of commitment. And in this case, it's achievement orientation. But I'm going to come across it from a different angle. Last week, I talked about athletes who drive in a goal-setting sense. But actually, we're going to look at this when it's the other way around. When the athlete is highly achievement-focused and when the coach is low in achievement orientation. This is what we're going to look at today. And when this does happen, this mismatch, well, it can create frustration. It can create doubt and even anxiety for an athlete. So today we're going to explore this that little bit deeper. We're going to look at what this dynamic looks like. We're going to look at the strengths and risks on both sides, how coaches and athletes can meet at that halfway mark, and how, again, this links to the coach-athlete relationship and longer-term development and enjoyment, I guess. So let's start with the coach. This low achievement orientated coach, the coach who's easily distracted, who takes shortcuts, who does the minimum required, whose timekeeping is questionable, often turning up late, appearing disorganized. The coach who finds structured goal setting stressful, who avoids deep learning or CPD, who's keen on quick Instagram reels and YouTube shorts to help them. This coach seems rushed a lot. But let's keep a balance here. It's not all negative about this coach. This coach might still care about their athletes. They might value enjoyment and participation. They might create a really relaxed atmosphere and reduce the pressure for athletes. And for some athletes, this low pressure environment, well, it works really, really well. But, and yep, there's a but again, for the highly driven athlete, it can feel very, very different, the experience. And this is where the high achievement orientated athlete comes in. This athlete is likely to train really hard and consistently. They leave no stone unturned. They work on technical skills, their physical conditioning an awful lot. They arrive early, they're highly organized, they're enthusiastic, arguably too enthusiastic at times, if that's possible. They complete extra work independently. They're hugely conscientious, highly focused on their goals and any performance data. And hey, again, these are fantastic qualities. This commitment, discipline, work ethic, purpose. But again, there's risks for this athlete. They might actually struggle to prioritize and spend their time in the wrong way. They might overtrain. They may well neglect recovery. And they might be training out of fear. So they become anxious. They might base their identity on their performance, and inside they might feel taken for granted because after all, they are the postman. They're always delivering. And when that coach appears less focused or less organized, well, this type of athlete is going to feel frustrated, unsupported, unwanted, or even inadequate. They feel it deep inside. And then that worry becomes, am I in the right environment? Does this coach really care about me or my development? And this is where thinking about this coach-athlete relationship becomes crucial again, as I draw upon Professor Sophia Jowett's research. So again, we're going to look at 4 C's of this research as a little reminder. So we've got closeness and this trust and emotional connection. We've got commitment and the shared investment in goals. We've got complementarity and working together well, understanding each other's roles. And then the biggest risk to a breakdown in this relationship is co-orientation. So being on the same page, in this situation, the athlete is thinking about performance, about detail, about excellence, about perfection, where the coach might be thinking very, very different. About participation, about fun, about keeping it simple, about not overcomplicating things. And neither's wrong. Yet, if expectations aren't discussed, frustration is going to grow silently in the athlete. And when this high-achieving athlete feels their efforts aren't recognized, well, their motivation and their well-being might well suffer. So, how can the coach, this low achievement orientated coach, and then this athlete who's high in achievement orientation, how can they meet halfway? How can we bring some alignment? Firstly, when we think about the coach, well, they can acknowledge the athlete's drive. So this is about communication and just recognizing the work that they put in. I see you working hard. And that can go a long way for an athlete. When it comes down to sessions, well, structure is going to be key here. So clearly telling this type of athlete about the aims of the session, setting some simple developmental targets, giving some occasional performance feedback. It doesn't actually need to be complex. It's just got to be intentional. Also, something that's important is going to be protecting the athlete from actually overdoing it. High achievers often need some permission to relax, to chill, to rest, to recover, to take some breaks. And ultimately, this is going to support that feeling of control and their longer-term confidence. Number 4 here is about communication again. Really keeping communication open is so important. Having some chats with the athlete about asking what they're working on in outside sessions. How are they managing their workload? Do they need some support from yourself, the coach, or from other people? And if we're going to focus on the athlete now, and what they need to learn, well, meeting halfway also means that the athlete is going to have to watch some outside noise. Be careful what they're listening to from their peers, from their friends, from their parents and family. Because there's a fair chance that their expectations of that environment, of that coach, are going to be challenged. And with other people in their ear, those expectations can quite quickly become unrealistic. They've got to recognize that not every coach is going to match their intensity. When it comes down to self-regulation, that athlete is really going to have to manage their training load, their recovery, and stress too. And that word process again, thinking about process before perfection. This is key. Efforts, small efforts are valuable for the athlete, and really focusing on being smart in how they spend their time in training sessions and in matches, in competitive events is going to be really, really key here. We've got their communication skills. High achievers often just assume that coaches should notice everything, but actually sometimes they need to express it more clearly themselves. The coaches aren't mind readers. They don't necessarily understand what is going on inside of your head. Now, if we think about the bigger picture here, this situation that I've talked about achievement orientation, it does bring us back to this 4C's framework called mental toughness. The differences between coaches and athletes is going to have an influence on all of the C's. In this dynamic, confidence really can drop for an athlete if their efforts aren't recognized. When it comes down to control, it's going to improve when the athlete learns to manage their own workload and expectations. For an athlete, the challenge for them is going to be psychological. Can they learn to adapt, communicate better, stay balanced in this type of environment? And then for coaches, well, the challenge is going to be learning how to stretch and how to support this highly driven athlete without increasing the pressure unnecessarily. So yeah, as I sum up here, when you've got a highly driven athlete and when you've got a low achievement orientated coach, there really is a big risk of misalignment. But the solution isn't for one side to change their ways completely. It's quite clear in my eyes. It's all about better, more effective communication. It's about clearer expectations. It's about recognizing each other's strengths and certainly not playing the blame game, which often does happen. Working towards this shared understanding. Because let's face it, when alignment does happen in this respect, well, the magic's going to happen, isn't it? And what I mean by the magic, well, people are going to perform better. They're going to feel better in themselves. There's going to be more smiles on faces. Motivation's going to be protected. And then the long-term prospects for this very committed athlete is going to go up. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope it's given you something to ponder, something to think about. A big thank you for listening today. And again, if it has resonated with you, feel free to share it on with a coach, with an athlete, with a parent who might recognize this situation. And again, feel free to get in touch. Let me know your thoughts. Have you come across this before? Has it jogged your memory? Can you offer me some advice maybe on this situation? Can you offer me some guidance as well on the other measures of mental toughness, which I'm going to talk about in the next 4 episodes? If you've got any questions or any situations that you've come across, I might be able to add them in to an episode. Have a great week anyway, in the meantime. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sport psychology resources. Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.